What if the language you speak decides whether you belong? What if it determines whether your culture survives? Now, when I became a mom, I realized that question wasn't theoretical at all. It was deeply personal. I was holding in my arms a baby boy in a country far from where I grew up, wondering which language I should speak to him. I was raised in Turkish. I live and work in Spanish. I have long conversations in Greek. I laugh in Italian. I struggle in German. And suddenly, I had to choose. Which linguistic world do I pass on to my baby, and which one do I leave behind in the process? Now, this wasn't just a question of words. It was a question of identity, of culture, of emotional logic. Because languages, I've come to discover, is one of the most important blueprints that we inherit, and one of the most powerful tools that we have to reshape the way we understand belonging in a globalized world. When my great-grandmother fled Georgia on foot with her 2 sons, my grandfather and his brother, she carried no belongings. What she carried was language: Georgian, Russian, Turkish. She settled near the Turkish border in a village with people from the same region, and their survival wasn't at all physical. It was cultural. They rebuilt their lives word by word. My father used to remember when he was a kid, when his parents didn't want the kids to figure out what the conversation was about, they'd switch languages mid-sentence. Language was privacy. It was protection, power. Alas, over time, Georgian ended up disappearing. Then came Russian. Only Turkish remained. And then German entered the picture from my mother's side when her parents decided to immigrate to Germany as guest workers. Now, I've already told you this. I was born and raised in Turkey. My German cousins, all native speakers, sound nothing like me. My Turkish accent always marked me as a stranger, an outsider even within my own family. I mean, I did try to keep up, but every time I tried, there was something in the way. An inherited security. A struggle I couldn't just point my finger at. Now, I speak several languages. English and Spanish shape my work and home life. Turkish is still the language of my instincts. I use Greek as a space for shared expression. I admire Italian for the rhythm and the emotionality that it brings. German, still complicated. I admire it, but it still feels like a wall of glass. My husband is Spanish with Italian roots. His father never learned the language, so it disappeared there. It's the shared absence that we have between what we inherit and what we actually live. And now our son is growing up in Spanish. I talk to him in Turkish. And in this mixture of syllables and melodies, a new linguistic blueprint is forming, something that I couldn't have predicted. And that brings me to something that I do not think we talk about enough: linguistic relativity. Because when we talk about languages, languages are not just tools. They are lenses. They don't just describe the world, they shape the way we see it. Let me give you a couple of examples. For instance, in Italian, when you want to say I miss you, you say mi manchi, which literally translates as you are missing from me. It's as if the person you're missing is an integral part of your very self, and that physical portion of your very self is being taken away from you. In Turkish, we show respect through grammar. The way you would address an elder is structurally different from the way you would speak to a peer. In German, thought is like architecture: precise, complete, layered. These aren't just phrases. They are emotional frameworks. They teach us how to live, how to love, how to navigate conflict, intimacy. And when you grow up between languages, you grow up between emotional worlds. And language, might I say, is never just about the self. It's about culture. Because languages are born from cultures, and cultures are stored inside the language. This is why when you lose a language, you lose a way of thinking, of feeling, of belonging. You lose stories, humor, gestures. And in a globalized world like this connection between language and culture becomes even more crucial. Because when you think about it, when people move, they don't just carry passports, they carry language. And inside that language, there is a culture. And yet, language still continues to act as a gatekeeper. If you speak with an accent, you're not from here. If you speak your heritage language imperfectly, you risk being laughed at. I once met someone who spoke fluent Italian, only the version passed down onto her from her grandmother that immigrated to Canada in the 60s. Whenever she would visit Italy and she would speak in Italian, people told her that she sounded like a nonna, a grandmother. She belonged, but not quite. That not quite lives in so many of us. We do not fit cleanly into one language, into one culture, into oneself. We live in what we call linguistic liminality, between selves, between tongues, between cultures. But here is the shift. This in-between space does not have to be one of loss. It can be one of creation. There is a concept called in social linguistics called cultural resilience, which is the capacity of a community or an individual to maintain, adapt, and transmit culture. Linguist Joshua Fishman, when he studied why languages decline and what we can do to sustain them, what he found out was that languages rarely disappear overnight. What they do is gradually fade away, oftentimes when children stop speaking them at home. But it is really subtle. It starts like a whisper, a substitution of just one word, just one sentence, an entire conversation, until eventually it comes to a point where language is no longer representing the reality, but it is already passed on collective memory. And that is when we call a language that language, when no one uses it as a mother tongue anymore. However, in the very same research, Fishman talks about what we can do to sustain the languages and the cultures inside of them. And he says that we do not need perfection. We do not need flawless grammar. What we need is intention. This is why a partial speaker, or a hesitant learner even, can play their part in maintaining one culture, one language, and the culture inside of it alive. Because you can pass on something broken, you can speak with an accent, you can mix and match, you can adapt. And by doing so, you are not erasing culture, you are evolving it. Because when we talk about culture, cultures aren't fixed structures, they are living creatures. When people immigrate to a different country, they carry their culture like a suitcase. And over time, that suitcase becomes rather of a time capsule. Their language and customs freeze, all the while the source culture keeps evolving. For instance, a child growing up in Germany talking Turkish from the 80s might sound foreign in modern-day Istanbul. But it doesn't make that Turkish invalid. It makes it a version, a threat. And that threat is exactly where we can design to redesign our blueprints of belonging. Because multilingualism isn't just a skill. It's a way of remaking how we understand ourselves and others. It's about creating a global identity, one that does not look to erase our differences, but openly and consciously makes space for them. Cultural theorist Homike Baba refers to third space when he's talking about cultural interpretation. In this space, identity is something that is being proactively forged. Meaning is something that is being proactively identified between inherited traditions and contemporary realities. In this third space, identity isn't something that you are handed. It is something that you craft with language, with culture, with care. So what does this mean practically? It means we get to decide which emotional and cultural frameworks to carry forward. We can raise children in homes where language isn't about purity or performance, but about curiosity, about empathy, and about intention. And with that, I come back to my son. He might one day forget a Turkish word. He might one day use a Turkish idiom I loved as a kid wrong. Someone might tell him he doesn't quite belong. But I hope he remembers this. Language is not a test. It's a tool, a bridge, a map. He can belong in many places, and he can carry many cultures, because languages and cultures are intertwined. One does not survive without the other. And when we choose what to carry forward, when we design the new blueprints that reflect the global, multilingual, multicultural reality that we live in, we are not weakening identity. We broaden it. We strengthen it. We create something new. Our languages may shift. Our cultures may evolve. But if we speak and live with intention, they cannot disappear. They redesign us. And we, in turn, get to redesign the world. Thank you.